Just tell me quickly on. So you've got Jab.
Yeah.
You're the founder and CEO of Jab, but you started off in a job. You then went into side hustling, doing your own jobs here and there, and that ended up with you starting Jab, taking on all that risk. So one of the things that I'm campaigning on is the rules to make it easier to be a side hustler and a freelancer, called the IR35 rules.
Yeah.
So just give me a quick brief on your time as a side hustler. How important was that in where you are now? And also just your first job and how important that opportunity was for you to get on the jobs ladder in your entrepreneurial journey.
So I went from boxing, right? I went from boxing then into PTing, right?
Yeah.
And then I ended up getting the opportunity to go to be a PT in a high-end gym, right? So I went from sort of PTing in East London, sort of cab drivers and whatever, and then going to Notting Hill and building a luxury, building a high-end clientele.
Yeah.
I then left there and went out and built a sort of my own clientele and was self-employed PT and went around to people's homes and trained them, right?
At the same time,
I was trying to...
Yeah, the job and your side hustling.
Yes, and at the same time, I was trying to set up Jab, right?
Yeah.
And set up the business. And I carried on doing that for a period of time.
Yeah.
And then I've currently, when you're going through that process, you have to sort of learn how to, which I'll be honest, it was one of the hardest processes I went to. How do I go from someone who's bringing in most of your revenue to someone who's now working on the business and is not fully relied on by the business to generate sales?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that side hustling process lasted for a long period of time. I've only just come out of it. It took me about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. But it was crucial for you to...
I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise.
Because you basically, you can build up your experience, you build up confidence, momentum, and savings that help you go on and...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you learn also about your product, right, and what you're offering, and I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And but whilst you're building a business, it's pretty hard to take out, a constant pay package. So you've got to get to that point where you're able to transition out of it. Do you see what?
Yeah. Just because that's like I was saying, there's these freelancer rules. It's called IR35, where the government's made it harder for people to do that. And actually, they're approaching it simply from a tax perspective. But there are so many other layers to entrepreneurship, but especially side hustling, that's so crucial to get people set up in business. Like you just said, it's like your product, you're optimizing your product when you're in a job. You probably can't leave the job because, like, you got a young family at the time, so you want the security of the job, and then in your spare time you're side hustling, and it helps you actually save up a bit of income to start the business.
Yeah, I've got to be honest with you. If I had my first baby when I was 27, right, and my girlfriend was 23, so we was young, and it was just like you're into that position.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how hard it was.
Yeah,
going from having a business, a baby, and having to work my nuts off to make a few quid to look after them and try and make the business succeed at the same time.
Yeah.
I think it's merely impossible.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the amount of hours you have to put in to do that and the pressure you're under because now you have to deliver for a family as well is incredibly hard.
Yeah. And what about, and then just tell me, just reversing before side hustling, reversing to the time where you were working in fitness.
Yes.
You said earlier that basically, like, that was so crucial because in your journey to becoming an entrepreneur, you learned the skills, you built your confidence, you built up a client base. Part of our campaign here is for small businesses for the government to really support small businesses through lowering regulations on them, through lowering taxes on them, so that communities across the country they're not just viewing them as businesses, but they're actually viewing them as hubs of local opportunity for people to get into the...
Yes.
So just tell me a bit about that, like your first jobs and whatever, and how crucial they were in getting you going, getting you earning money, getting you into the jobs ladder. A lot of people, you said, from where you came from, didn't necessarily go down that path, and they might have chosen different lines of work. How crucial was that for you to have that sort of opportunity?
Well, if you're, say, someone like me, right, who's boxed and who sort of grew up on a East London council estate, right, and you've not gone the educational route of university, which was quite rare. You've got a few ways you go. You've become a cab driver, a builder, or We sell drugs.
You chose the third.
But you know,
Yeah.
what opportunities are there?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you've got you know, I'd say a business in the area that's inspiring for you
Yeah.
as a young 17, 18, 19-year-old,
Yeah.
that's going to give you the footsteps forward and the opportunity for you to go out there. That might be your first job. You go there, you're learning from someone who's, say, 10, 15 years older than you, is taking that risk, right? And then you might go on to bigger and better things, right?
Yeah.
But it's that first step, which, by the way, I think is the hardest part.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Right, because you lack confidence. You know, you've got to go out there into the world. You've just left school, college, and maybe, you know, not university so much, depending on where you've gone.
Yeah.
And I think that first step is the hardest part for me. When I was 21 when I first got my job at a gym in Notting Hill.
Yeah.
And that was very nerve-wracking. I went out there, it was a completely different world. Never been to Notting Hill before.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you go out there and you've got to prove yourself, right? And then you find the opportunity and you've got to be smart enough to do so.
But you end up in Notting Hill because where you were, there wasn't any local opportunity.
No, there wasn't that sort of
And that's the
opportunity.
point. That's what I think about it. Exactly what you said. Like,
I would say as well, for anyone young, you've got to find the environment. It's all about the environment you're in, right?
yeah.
So if you get around other smart people, then you've got more likelihood of being successful, right? So that's the way I looked at it. What is that in local communities? Not everyone wants to go away and move away from their family and go elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
So how do you create that in say where I was living at the time in Essex? How do you create that there? You know what I mean? How do you create that in these small communities on the outskirts of London?
And that's the thing, what you just said there is that you've got three options, right? Yeah, if you're in a place and there's no local opportunity, you've got three options, like you said. One of them is, you know, selling drugs.
Well, the thing that what I found was it's all to do with confidence.
Yeah.
Right. And when you grow up and you've gone to a school that isn't, you know, producing kids with good grades, etc.
Yeah.
Most kids there will lack the belief that they can be successful.
Yeah.
Right. And then what you find is there's a ton of obstacles in the way for you becoming successful.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you change that? I personally think it starts from there. For me, I was lucky enough where I had a sort of decent family home, and the boxing club was a savior for me in that sense.
It was, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was amazing for young kids like me to create discipline, to create a good lifestyle. That's what it was about, right? And that's what inspired what we're doing here. But, you know, if you don't have that, how do you do it?
And that's the thing, is like, at the moment, you know, there's so many people, the government's trying to wrestle with this, like, especially post-COVID, so many young people getting into welfare. But the reality is exactly what you just said. There's, if you don't create local opportunity, and it's local's got to be the point, right? It's not just about more jobs in technology in London or more jobs for the big four in London. It's got to be local available opportunity, probably within the physical, physical entrepreneurship, whether it's hospitality or high street, whatever. If you don't create that, you're never going to deal with welfare, because like you said, people then just end up in, you know, doing all sorts of wrong activities or going on benefits because they haven't got that opportunity.
How do you create that though in smaller communities?
But that's part of the campaign, is to say, you know, local businesses like what you've spoken about should be viewed as opportunity hubs. Right. So, you know, you spoke to me about all the obstacles you've encountered getting this business up and running, going from being in employment to a side hustler to opening this business, the setbacks you faced along the way, all the taxes, all the regulations, all the licensing issues you've got out front, and all the back end stuff that's just not helpful for you. Imagine if you were spending all of your time more productively rather than dealing with all of this compliance and nonsense. You'll probably be growing quicker. Like you told me about your expansion plan. You'll be growing quicker. You'll probably be employing more people. And that's essentially what, you know, small businesses, actually, the government should be viewing them as opportunity hubs. So not treating a small business like this the same as Goldman Sachs, right? In terms of all the employment regulations you've got to do, in terms of all the national insurance you've got to pay, the business rates, right? So, you know, that's what our campaign is about, is deregulating.
The biggest one for me is I personally get affected by is we're a young business, right? So we're a small business. Obviously, we have big dreams and whatever, and a lot of growth can happen. But in the grand scheme of things, we're a small business.
Yeah.
Now, for someone like me to transition from the side hustle,
Yeah.
where I'm generating sales, I'm working my nuts off to generate them sales, right? And then I'm taking a wage. Part of that's going to pay for the business, and then I'm taking a wage out myself.
Yeah.
I'm then getting taxed 45% on the wage I'm taking out.
After you've paid all the other taxes.
After I've paid all the other tax through to the business, PAYE, corporation tax, etc., etc.
Yeah.
That there to me is bizarre because you're getting stung every angle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that there for me for me, anyone would look, obviously I have a lot of friends that are still, working class. To them, I'm having it off. Do you know what I mean? I'm having it off. But to me, it's still hard. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So tell me about that then. So because that's the one thing I have seen up close, that actually most people in politics who set all the rules for small businesses, first of all, have never worked in a business, right? And therefore they assume business is something, it's all about, it's one thing, it's all about people making millions of pounds, and actually we can just increase a few taxes here and there.
Yeah.
What they don't see is the emotional stress, not to mention your young family, the emotional stress, the hassle factor that you've got to go through. And at the end of the day, is it actually worth it at the moment, right? When you're saying you're getting you're getting taxed the same as someone who has a job, but on top of that, you've got to bear all the personal risk, the liability, you've got to worry about payroll, you've got to worry about, all the different obligations you have to your staff. Explain a bit of that. Like, what is life actually like for you? You've got one store, you want to grow, right? What is actually the day-to-day? Forget expansion, just staying afloat, right?
So I'll get up at 5 o'clock every morning.
Yeah.
Right. I get on a train, come into work. Yeah. I then get home most days between 8 and 9 at night. That means my kids are abed. Yeah. Right. And then I work on Saturdays as well.
Yeah.
So I one day from home where I work from home. But obviously you've known me for a while, over the last 5 years, I've aged a lot, right? A little bit. If you go through, if you think of, if my team was to obviously look at me, I'm the one taking the stress, right?
Yeah.
If you look at that and you look at the obstacles that someone like me would have to overcome to get to where we are right now, you would say, don't bother doing it.
Yeah.
Because the reward you're getting for the amount you're going through, you say, don't bother, just go and work for
How mad is that?
For a third space, right? For a big company, or continue, doing what you was doing before, where I was going to people's homes and training them, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's different for me because I have a big dream and a big vision. But what's it like for the ones that don't have that big dream and big vision and just want to have a small business where they tick over and live a decent life in the suburbs, etc.?
Yeah.
Which
is important.
Well, of course it is.
Yeah.
Because they're still creating opportunity for people.
And that's the thing, that's the interesting thing, you're just saying that about going work for a third space or whatever, is that all these rules, that's what a lot of politicians don't understand, who create these rules and who have only ever worked in the public sector, is the more rules you put in on a small business and the more taxes you put in, what you're doing is you're actually anti-small businessman, but you're actually pro-corporate. So the more rules there are, it's easy for a massive company to go and do them because they can afford it and they have all the lawyers and the accountants at the back end, but it's flipping difficult for you to do that, right? And so if that's the reason for our campaign, is to say small businesses need to be encouraged and they need to be actually treated with a different set of attitudes to how we treat big businesses, because it's so difficult. Most businesses, like we spoke about earlier, most businesses fail within the first 2 years of even being set up, right? That's just because you haven't got the product, the market, the model doesn't work or whatever. But you still need those people trying, because in the meantime, for those 2 years, let's say a business starts and fails, well, someone's been employed for a couple of years, business rates or council tax has been paid for a couple of years, right? It's generated activity. And like we spoke about on the other saw, right? You might have a business that, like every business, gets started and then you've got to pivot and then you've got to iterate your product or whatever, and it might not work out. But nevertheless, that street that you open in gets activity, it gets people coming, it gets customers who get served, it gets employees, and it creates a vibrancy. When you go outside London, especially, by the way, but inside London too, but especially outside London, our high streets are completely decimated. There's no activity. There's no sense of community spirit or entity, right? Right, exactly.
Mm.
And there isn't that local opportunity or optimistic attitudes. And that's
So I see a video come up last night, and it was going back to, it was London in the 80s, and it was of a small business in Bermondsey that was like that was a clothing shop. It was a young brothers, and they were talking about, you know, they got this in there, and, you know, this jacket and whatever. How hard is that now? For young people in their early mid-20s to go and make a success of something like that now. Because of the rent, because of the business taxes, because of the council taxes, etc. To go and pull something like that off, you're so squeezed, it's hard to get a margin out of it. Which is what it's about, right? You know, that's how you survive.
Exactly. And you mentioned business rates. Like, one of the things we found in the report I did, The British Entrepreneur, one of the main obstacles to businesses looking to expand like you are was business rates. And the sense of unfairness that, for example, let's say you got your gym, you got X amount of square foot next to Apple, who have the same square footage. They're doing $100 million a year out of that store, and you're doing, you know, a fraction of that, yet you're paying the same business rates.
I know,
right? You know, that's, you know, how's that fair, right? So that was actually one of the main obstacles that we kept on hearing about. That was the sense of unfairness around business rates, that you're paying them regardless. And actually, that really plays on the minds of entrepreneurs. When you said, like, especially if you've got personal liability and you're going to be on the hook for these business rates, right? Regardless of the performance of your business.
But even for us to have the tables and chairs outside costs us pavement license. That process, even for us doing banking, that process is painful, and it's because of the regulations and licenses on everything when it comes to business. That when you should be focusing really on growing your business and creating a margin and creating a good revenue stream so you can then pay and feed and look after all your employees and create, you know, a better life for everyone. You're worrying about getting sued because you ain't paid your business rates on your table and chairs. That's like, you know, that's ridiculous. What do you think, like, the fundamentals are of creating a good economy?
I think so. Look, our campaign's focusing on small businesses, and the report that we wrote and researched was to analyze how many people there are in Britain who actually have entrepreneurial aspirations, and what we can do to get them into entrepreneurship and get them to start up their own businesses. Guess what? Side hustling is one of them. And then it's people like yourself, which is people who have actually got up and running. You've now got a stable business, which is very difficult to get to, and now you're looking at growth. And there are so many, there's like 30,000 businesses, just under 30,000 businesses, that are purposefully not growing. So they're actually actively looking to not grow because they don't want to go above the VAT threshold, right? At 90 grand, where all of a sudden you've got to start charging VAT because they're frightened, because then you get whacked for 20%, right? So we've got to reform all the regulations and taxes for small businesses so that, you know, opportunities, economic opportunity in all communities can increase. And, you know, this
so
is
you understand this because you're an entrepreneur, right?
Exactly. And well, like I said, we researched this and spoke to hundreds of entrepreneurs for our report, The British Entrepreneur. But you know, and you, for example, here as Jab, you're in the latter category, which is you're up and running and looking to grow, right? So how many people have you got here now?
We've got 35, 40 people, basically. So we've got a head office, which is where we're building that. So if you was looking at a small business, what would you have? You'd just have your team on the floor, right? The ones running, and then you don't really have your head office, you know. There's a lot more, I think there's a lot more opportunity out there if you're a business that's in a growth phase, meaning you've proven your business model, right? You've shown that there's a market for what you're offering, right? And you're going to go out there and you're going to grow. There's a lot more opportunity, right? And obviously if you like private, you've got private equity, VC, etc. You know. And I think the journey gets easier when you go on that journey, right? But to get to that first part, from going from a side hustler to someone that has a business that works, that for me, what I'm doing, we're working incredibly hard. We have big dreams, right? Over the next handful of years, So our goal is we want to open 10 sites across London and the US within a 4-year period. That's a major task. and I'm working my nuts off. But this part is much easier than that first 8 years
getting
I
off the
went
ground,
to get to here.
Yeah.
Much easier.
Yeah.
In terms of that first 8 years, in terms of the output that you have to put out and how productive you have to be to move the needle, right, is incredibly hard.
I'll ask you, so because one of my suggestions that we tested in the report was something called business startup relief, where you can take some of your income from employment if it's going towards the start of a new business, and you get a bit of a tax break. Would that have helped you? What things do you think would have made that first bit you spoke about a little bit easier?
Well, it's margin, isn't it? So it's how much, you know, skin you have on the bone, right? And the issue is that the reason you've got to work so hard is because you've got to be able to pay yourself, like me, pay your family, and get a business to work all at the same time, right? So to have a little bit of tax release as a starting business would be lovely. Things like what helped us in the early days was the EIS, right? Because investors are incentivized to invest in a startup business. What other reliefs out there can be done to help young business get off their feet, right? It's that first 0 to 5 million, isn't it? You know, what can be done to get a business to get off their feet and rolling? Because, you know, we've got a ton of young employees here, early 20s, right? And for someone like me, you have to, and you know, yourself, you've got to show up, and you're a leader for them. Right? You're someone who's going out there and doing it, and you're 10 years ahead of them. And I'm sure that, you know, touch wood, we're very successful. You're going to create a ton of opportunity and experience for these people, right? So by the time they get to their early, mid-30s, they've going to been a part of a business that's grown, they've going to seen it, they've going to learn from it, and they're going to be able to go out and do it themselves. Right? How do we create more?
Exactly. Because it's interesting you say that, because at the moment there's a bunch of politicians talking about making capital gains tax, so the tax when you sell your business, equalizing that with income tax, right? So I was just about to say, like, you're talking about how difficult it is. You've got to pay yourself. You're paying income tax, but you're also paying all the other taxes that you're personally liable for on top of income tax for business.
And then when my grandparents pass away, they have to pay tax as well.
It's okay. Right? It's okay. How if they then equalize capital gains tax with income tax? How do you think that would be terrible for someone like yourself looking to start a business?
Mate,
would it take away the incentive?
Personally, I'm at a threshold where I'm, and I have a lot of entrepreneurs coming in here.
As customers?
Yes, a lot of them. Smart, making a lot of money, right? But also being, you know, they're now at a level where they're going, I'm not going to put up with this no more. You know, I'll go and move to Dubai, and I'll pay 9% tax. Right? And I think what you have to be aware of is people, you know, like myself, like yourself, people that want to, that you have that little bit of hustle and grind, will just find other opportunities to move elsewhere. Do you know what I mean? And the thing is, for someone like myself, obviously, I'm a local business. So this business is benefiting everyone within a 4-mile radius, 2-mile radius, right? We're a local business. That's what we are. So for us, you know, and also I love London and I've got a family here. For me to do that is a lot of ag. Why would I want to do that? Right? And obviously, I've grew up in London, and for me, wherever I've been in the world, I come back to London, I go, fucking, this is an amazing city, mate. It's the best place in the world, isn't it? It's not hard to make it a place where everyone wants to be. And currently, what I feel, and the topic of conversation, is people are now finding opportunities elsewhere and moving their business elsewhere, which means they're you know, local young people are losing out on opportunities.
Exactly.
Because they're being squeezed too much.
Exactly. Just tell me, you mentioned you want to do. You got 35 people now.
Yes.
Which is amazing. That's incredible. That's a hell of a lot of people, actually. And you want to do 10 more of these.
Yes.
In the UK and US, you said.
Yes.
So why are you at, like, what is it about? Have you been out to the US?
Yeah, I've been out quite a bit.
And what do you think? What do you think about the sort of cultural difference, the political culture, US versus UK, with regards to supporting you?
Well, I was out there a few months ago, right? And
New York.
And when you go out to the US and you're in somewhere like New York, anything's possible, right? And people are behind that and they're supporting it. You don't get that here. Do you know what I mean? If you
as an entrepreneur,
no. If you fail in the US,
Yeah.
you know, and you get back up and you have the balls to go and start again, you're celebrated.
Yeah.
You know, in the UK, you don't have, it's not the same culture,
Yeah.
but it's the way it's the way society's being led as well, right? For me, you know, and I think you know, right now it's everything's fear, isn't it? It's all fear based. Everyone's scared. Everyone, you know, this is happening, taxes increasing. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so what happens is you look elsewhere. So for me, if I can get this business to the US, our scalability and our opportunity goes through the roof.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going to aim for.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And it's sad because I'd rather you were saying that you want to have 50 stores around the UK, right?
Well, a lot easier. But
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So to enter a different market like the US that's highly competitive is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Right. And will take us a lot of hard work, and I'll have to fly back and forward, leave my family here. Right.
Yeah.
Or I'll have to pick them up and move them out there and take them with me. And don't get me wrong, you know, I would love to do that and love to experience it. But it's a lot easier it would be a lot easier for me if I could stay in this market and open up 50 locations than it would if I was to go to there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. It's interesting because in what we discovered was one of the reasons for a lot of people who are interested in entrepreneurship but don't quite make the jump, they're sort of on the fence, is that fear of failure here is 20% higher than elsewhere.
Why?
And I think exactly what you said, which is that, you know, in America, people start a business, it doesn't work, they go bankrupt, they start again the next day, they'll get a loan from the bank, pat on the back, crack on. Whereas here, it's not the same culture. Like if you have a venture that doesn't really work out, it feels like you're sort of ostracized from society a little bit.
Yeah, you're
like,
you
know,
have
got
to
black
go
mark
off grid.
Yeah, got a bit back. You get a black mark against your name, right?
Yeah. So
You're in a naughty corner.
yes, exactly. Yeah. And I personally, I think that's the wrong mentality.
It is.
Why? Because, you know, if you grow up like I did, where you know, you haven't had an amazing education, how do you learn? You learn by doing.
And failing.
And failing. And learn and getting up and going again.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, you listen to every motivational speaker out there and that's what they talk about.
Yeah.
You know, and they give you the confidence to do that. But if that's what's pat down upon, then, and we're so fearful of failing, why are we ever going to do anything?
Yeah.
That's crazy, right? I have one of my colleagues who's an older guy and he's in his late 50s, started a bank, right? A fintech bank. And incredibly smart guy, right? And you got, you know, went out there and wanted to start a fintech bank 10 years ago. If you listen to the regulations they went through, get to where they got to, it is crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy. And do you know what he says to me? If I started this in the US, I'd be a £1 billion company.
Yeah.
And that is the difference in mindset.
And that's the crazy thing, by the way, is exactly that. It's just like, it's not necessarily that I mean, we have some of the most entrepreneurial and innovative people in the world here. It's just that in the US, the same effort, the same concept goes 10 times further.
Yes.
And then we're running around scratching our heads as to why Americans are almost twice as wealthy as we are on average, right? And it's simply because they've got this culture that celebrates and rewards productivity, productive people and jobs and opportunity and entrepreneurship. Right. So for this, George, so if there's one sort of message you'd have to like all the politicians who are setting the rules for entrepreneurs and for small business owners like you know, what would the message be for you where you are today, but also you back when you were trying to start out? You know, what would it be that you would say to them to make it easier for you, and why do they need to make it easier for you? Right.
Well, for one, I think the tax and the regulations is just got a little bit crazy, right?
Yeah.
And the loopholes you have to, you know, the jump through and ticks to even get started is crazy.
Yeah.
So for you to be able to go from where you was a side hustling and then starting a business, is sort of merely impossible.
Yeah.
You have to go to, you know, the ends of, you know, to make that happen. So
because the high costs and, you know, you're on the hook regardless of what happens for all these costs.
It's squeezing margin. Right? If it's all a constant struggle to get any sort of margin out of a business, what's the point in doing it? Right?
Because the chance, statistically, most businesses fail, right? But there's nothing like what you said about America. There's nothing wrong with failure, right? Because that's in someone's journey. That's going to help them iterate and go again, or that's at least going to provide opportunities in that business for people to get employed for a couple of years. Or there's all sorts of benefits to failure that we should actually encourage. But basically what you're saying is make it easy to get up and running, make it easy to fail. And
Yeah.
go again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't get my head around why we're so against failing. If you speak to anyone with a level of common sense, right, and you say, what's the best way to learn?
Yeah.
You know, a good one is the grandparents, right? You speak, what's the best way to learn? Fail and go again and learn from it, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like, you know, if it's merely impossible to fail and start again, right, and learn from your mistakes, then people are so fearful of it, right? You've got to have such extreme belief in yourself to have the ability to get up and go again and make your wrongs and rights and learn from it, etc. How do we make that process easier for young people?
And that's my point. Isn't it crazy that we hold first-time entrepreneurs, people who want to try and fail and go again and whatever, to the same standards we do multinational corporations who have been going for 80 years, right? Why don't we give people like yourself all sorts of breaks and make it easier so that you can try and fail and go again and build something? Because like you said, it's the 0 to 1 that's the flipping difficult, not the 2 to the 10, right?
Yeah. Well, the only reason I'd say is obviously politicians don't know, right? They've never done it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's all of these guys that are making the rules, they've never been there and done it.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I can say, because if they did do it, they'd be celebrating it.
Yeah.
Like for me, I've been through that process over the last 8 years of getting where I've got to now.
Yeah.
Right? Couldn't tell you how hard it was.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And just tell me the other thing, you're 100% right about that as well. Just tell me the other thing as well quickly. So you, on the 35 employees you got at the moment, you created 35 jobs out of thin air in a space where there was nothing here beforehand, right? That's incredible. You mentioned a bunch of them are really young, right?
Oh, look, think about this. Just think about this.
Yeah.
We done a deal on this site post-COVID, right? So we done a good deal. We was the first ones in here, right? And we was here for 6 months before any neighbours was here. Yeah. Right? We instantly drawed 1,500 people a week through the door.
Yeah.
Right? That means that we're paying rent to whoever owns this building.
Yeah.
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 We're drawing 1,500 people a week from the local surrounding within a 2-mile radius.
Yeah.
Okay? So we've created a better way of life for the people that live around the area, which we have.
Yeah.
And you can speak to every member that comes through the door to tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? And then on our front of house team, we have, most of them are in their early 20s, right?
Yeah.
Our GM now is 23 and is someone who come and worked on an hourly wage on our front of house and has showed a lot of great work ethic and common sense.
And you've got promoted to
promoted her, right?
And the crazy thing about that is right now we've got this graduates crisis where basically government for 2 decades has said everyone's got to go to university, or 50% of people have got to go to university.
Listen to this.
They're all studying degrees that are no longer that relevant. And actually, what would be brilliant if the government could encourage is opportunities locally for people to get into work, learn skills and get promoted, right?
Listen to this. Yeah. One of the girls that works with me, who's played a crucial role in this business's success, right? Went to university. Obviously, I didn't. Went to university. Sharp girl, has got a student loan, right? Is making good money, close to triple figures, right? A student loan, when you look at that, is increased over the period of time of how slow it's took. Honestly, I don't even know why you went to university. It would have been easier for her to go out into the world, get a job and go the route I've done, rather than go into university. And she said, I actually learned a lot, but the cost she's paid for that is crazy.
And I'm guessing it's completely, what she studied was completely different to what she's doing now, right?
Yeah, she studied history.
Yeah.
She's in marketing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like completely different. She's obviously, it learned you how to, it teaches you how to learn, right? That's what it does. But, you know, if she carried on the same rate of paying that student loan, she'd be paying off when she's 40.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mental.
You know, more, 50. You know, it's like, it's crazy how long this has took, you know?
Yeah.
So how do you expect young people to go out there, get in debt, study something that is not going to warrant them in the real world, actually?
Yeah.
You know, and then be in debt for that period of time, paying this off, which is coming out of their wage.
Yeah. It's mental, isn't it?
I think that's crazy.
It's mad. And like you said about like parents or grandparents' generation, completely different lifestyle, completely different opportunities to what's available today. Right now, we've got a graduate jobs crisis, right? Where exactly you said, young kids, indebted, degreed, you know, they've got a degree, and the jobs that they thought were there are no longer there because the government have told them forever that actually there's going to be this golden ticket, study this degree, take on this debt, and then you'll get a job and you'll be set for life. The reality is they get out there, there's no job, the industry's changed, AI's probably done it all, right? AI's probably eradicated it all, and then they haven't got a job. Whereas in reality, surely the right route is government support loads of local small businesses that provide local opportunities for people like that, young girls like that, to get into work, get promoted, become the GM, and then maybe they're the next George, right? And they start their own business.
Yeah,
start their own side.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? It's your journey all over again, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And of course, because because you're someone that's been through that, and you've had a bit of, you've gone through that hard journey, and you've made it work.
Yeah.
Anyone you see coming through that has that level of work ethic and grind and belief,
Yeah.
you want to give them the opportunity, right?
Yeah.
The thing is with big corporations, and you're talking, your Tesco's or your these massive multi-million-pound corporations, you don't have the person that has that same level of passion close to these young people. Do you see what I mean? You've got so many layers of management, so they won't have the same level of opportunity. Whereas Marcel, if I want to go and take talent from a big company, I'd say come and work with us. We'll be as big as them in the next 5 to 10 years, right? And you'll have more opportunity and more learning because you're close to the top. Do you know what I mean? You're close to the people that are going out there and getting up. Do you see what I mean? So that for me is anyone that has that level of drive, work ethic to get up and make something work, support them, back them.
100%.
Do you know what I mean? Because the amount of people they're going to help underneath them is crazy. I've got my nephew has been working for me, right? He's 17, started 17, come in as a cleaner, has now worked his way, and he's going to move into the sales team, right? For him, the reason he is, and he's coming all the way from Essex, the reason he is because he struggled to get a job where he is right now. Right? And he's leaving college, and he's struggling to get sort of an hourly wage job where he is, right? And they're on the outskirts of London, you know? And that's because there's not loads of small businesses thriving.
Exactly. And that's on the outskirts of London, right? Imagine further, Anyway, all right, pal. Appreciate it.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers. Thanks.
Appreciate that.